Let's start with something that still makes me uncomfortable to watch. The way Princess Diana's memory was used in that show, pulled out again and again to make you feel sorry for Meghan, was, in my opinion, one of the most manipulative things I have ever seen on screen. And the racism claims aimed at Meghan, still completely absurd to me. But here's the bigger story. The most controversial woman in the world is falling apart in public. And the one man who saw all of this coming years before anyone else did, the man who lost one of the biggest jobs in British television for daring to say it out loud, is now watching every single thing he predicted come true. Love him or hate him, you cannot ignore Piers Morgan right now. Everything he warned us about is happening. All of it at the same time. Today we are going through the 10 shocking truths Piers Morgan has been saying for 5 straight years. The truths that destroyed his career, the truths the mainstream media laughed at. The truths that are now, one by one, being proven right in the most public, most dramatic, most impossible to ignore way possible. Stay with me all the way to number 1. That one will change how you see this entire story. Let's get into it. We start here because this is where everything cracked open, in public, in front of millions of people. A few weeks ago, Meghan sat down with her close friend Jamie Kern-Lima. Rocking chairs, soft lighting, no makeup. The whole setup was designed to say, "This is the real me." She looked straight into the camera and told the world she was living the happiest, most fulfilled life she had ever known. Her words. She talked about her children, her marriage, her beautiful life in California. She compared Harry to a Super Mario hero, her protector, her champion, her everything. Write that down. The timeline matters. Then on April 25th, just weeks later, she posted something to her 4.5 million followers that sent the internet into a spin. She shared a quote about ending the hardest 7 years of your life. She shared it twice. On the same day, Piers Morgan reacted within hours, and the first thing he did was count backwards. 7 years from April 2025 lands you in 2018. Her wedding year, the year she married Prince Harry. The year she joined the most famous family on earth. Is that a coincidence? Piers doesn't believe in coincidences when it comes to Meghan Markle. He never has. He has always said this woman speaks in layers. Everything is deniable. Everything has a target. Nothing is accidental. So let me ask you a simple question. How do you go from the happiest life I have ever lived to the hardest 7 years of my life in just 3 weeks? Which version of Meghan are we supposed to believe? Because both cannot be true at the same time. They cannot even sit in the same sentence together. This is always where Piers starts, not with insults, not with personal attacks, just with the most basic question in journalism. Do the facts line up? Again and again, the answer is no. Here is something Piers Morgan has been pointing out for 5 years that somehow keeps getting ignored every time a new scandal breaks. Meghan Markle is not a queen. She walked away from the royal family in January 2020. She and Harry made that choice publicly, dramatically, and with no way back. They left. They gave up the duties. They stepped away from the roles. And yet, and this is what drives Piers to genuine anger, she has spent every year since then carefully building a world around herself where people treat her like one. A Las Vegas astrologer who calls herself a ride or die for hot messes recently posted about Meghan and used the phrase, "Here's to reigning again, capital R, capital Q, Queen." When that post went viral, the astrologer was thrilled that Meghan had shared her content. Think about what that tells you. The people in Meghan's world, the people she lifts up and amplifies, they are the ones calling her royalty. They are the ones telling her the planets owe her a comeback. They are the ones keeping alive an identity she technically surrendered the moment she landed in California. Piers has called the moment Meghan referred to herself as a princess on her own podcast one of the most revealing things she has ever done. She told little girls she was a real princess. She is not a princess. She knows she is not a princess. But she said it anyway because the brand needs it. The money depends on it. And here is Piers Morgan's central argument, the one he has never walked away from. You cannot hold the crown and the victim story at the same time. You cannot leave an institution, publicly attack it, profit from attacking it, and then use its name and image to sell candles and jam. You pick one. Meghan has spent 7 years refusing to pick one. And people on both sides of the Atlantic have grown very, very tired of watching her try. This one is different. This one Piers Morgan called one of the most accidentally revealing PR disasters in the history of modern celebrity branding. And you need to understand the full picture, because the surface story is embarrassing enough, but what is underneath it is genuinely damning. Meghan launched her Mother's Day collection. We are talking 64-pound candles, 42-pound gourmet chocolates in powder blue boxes. A lifestyle brand presenting itself as aspirational luxury for the modern woman. She sent a PR package to her most famous, most loyal supporter in the world, Serena Williams. When your best friend and biggest public ally agrees to open your product on camera for millions of followers, that is supposed to be easy. That is supposed to be the most flattering, most natural promotion money cannot buy. Serena Williams unboxing your brand should be the moment your empire introduces itself to the world. What actually happened was something else entirely. Serena opened the box. The chocolates had arrived completely smashed, broken, stuck together. She looked at them on camera. Her face said everything her words were trying hard not to say. Then she admitted on camera that she does not even like chocolate. She tried one anyway and called them beautiful while clearly struggling. Then came the candles, the ones Meghan says are inspired by her children's birthdays. Serena tried to read the scent descriptions out loud. She could not pronounce them. Multiple ones. She ended the video with, "Looks good." I love you, Meghan. The video went viral within the hour. Piers Morgan's verdict was instant and direct. When your closest, most famous ally in the world cannot pronounce your product while actively trying to promote it, that is not a bad PR day. That is the end of a brand. And the numbers sitting behind that viral moment only make it worse. On Meghan's luxury clothing resale platform, she had sold 8 items of clothing. 8? Some customers received candles with no wicks inside. The original Jam launch, the grand debut of her entire lifestyle empire, saw labels peeling off jars before they even reached the people who bought them. A woman who once had a $100 million Netflix deal, a $20 million Spotify contract, the most recognizable name on the planet for 3 solid years. And the business she has built from all of that is broken chocolates, candles without wicks, and 8 clothing sales. Nobody is buying it, literally. This one is different from all the others. This one is about power. Who has it? Who does not? And what happens when you use a title you walked away from to step into global politics? Harry traveled to Ukraine as a private citizen. No mandate from Britain. No official role. No permission from the palace, the government, or anyone else. He sat alongside heads of state and former prime ministers and gave a speech calling for American leadership on Ukraine, a speech that directly contradicted Donald Trump's publicly stated position on the conflict. Piers Morgan called it infantile. He called it immature. He called it irresponsible. The White House response confirmed that the speech had landed exactly as badly as Piers predicted. Trump was asked about it publicly and responded clearly. Prince Harry is not speaking for the United Kingdom. But here is where it gets genuinely serious. While Harry was giving that speech in Kiev, telling the world this was exactly what he was born to do, King Charles was preparing for the most important diplomatic moment of his entire reign, his historic address to the United States Congress. A moment requiring absolute precision, careful diplomacy, and total political neutrality. Harry's speech dropped 4 days before King Charles stood at that podium. The palace was furious. The British government was furious. And when you understand what this actually is, a non-working royal, stripped of his official duties by his own choice, freelancing on global politics using the power of a title he walked away from, you understand why the fury was not just political, it was personal. Piers has said it simply. You cannot freelance on the back of a title you abandoned. You made the choice to leave. You made the choice to step back. You do not get to use that identity when it boosts your global profile and then ignore it when it requires actual responsibility. The palace saw it exactly the same way. And what came next was the clearest signal yet that the relationship between Harry and his family has crossed a point of no return. Pay close attention here. This is the kind of moment that passes in seconds but carries the weight of a final verdict. During King Charles's address to Congress, one of the most watched royal events of the decade, the king spoke about American cities that carry the names of members of his family. He mentioned Charleston, named after King Charles II. He mentioned Williamsburg, named after King William. He did not say Harry. On the biggest stage of his reign, in front of the President of the United States and both houses of Congress, listing the ways his family's history is woven into the fabric of America, he left his second son off the list entirely. Piers Morgan spotted it immediately. He called it deliberate, public, and unmistakable. Not an editing decision, not an oversight, a signal. A clear, cold, calculated signal sent on the most public stage in the world to an audience of hundreds of millions. One that cannot be walked. Now place that alongside what happened to Prince Andrew. Charles stripped his own brother of every title, every patronage, every official connection, and his home. He did it quietly. He did it completely. And people close to Charles are now telling Piers that the question being asked inside the palace is whether Charles is considering what those close to him are calling the nuclear option. removing Harry's titles entirely, ending his official connection to the royal family, doing to Harry what he did to Andrew. Here is the argument Piers makes that should genuinely concern Harry's team. Andrew disgraced himself. He never publicly attacked the family. He never wrote a memoir tearing the institution apart from the inside. He never sat with Oprah Winfrey for 2 hours describing everything he believed was broken about the people he grew up with. He did not go on Netflix. He did not spend 400 pages of his own book calling the royal family cold, cruel, and impossible. Harry has done every single one of those things. If Charles stripped Andrew for what Andrew did, what logic stops him from doing the same to Harry for what Harry has done? The question is no longer whether this is possible. According to those close to the king, the question is whether it is now inevitable. Let's talk about the people who have been cut out of Meghan's life, not as gossip, as a pattern. Piers Morgan has always said the most revealing thing about any public figure is not who they surround themselves with. It is who they have systematically removed. Look at the people who were once genuinely close to Meghan Markle. Not per close, but actually close. And then look at what happened to them. Her entire family on her father's side gone, her father himself completely cut off. Friends she described as lifelong, advisors who worked closely with her in the early palace years, multiple staff members who left under circumstances serious enough to trigger a formal bullying investigation from Kensington Palace itself. Former Communications Secretary Jason Nauf put his concerns in writing, a documented email to his superior describing a consistent pattern of behavior toward staff. He used specific language, staff being pushed out of their positions, their confidence deliberately and systematically broken down. That is not an anonymous source. That is a named individual with documented evidence in black and white. Piers has said this clearly and without hesitation. A woman who has removed virtually everyone who ever challenged her, who has cut off her own family members one by one, who generated a formal workplace investigation at Kensington Palace, is not in any position to be hosting a podcast about the art of friendship and human connection. She recently launched content about how to be a good friend. Piers' response was immediate and characteristically blunt. As one of many people cut off the moment she gained a bit of royal traction, alongside her entire family on both sides, he said he does not believe Meghan Markle is in any position to be lecturing anyone about friendship. The audience has started to agree. This is the one Piers Morgan calls the quiet danger. Not the one generating the most headlines right now, but the one carrying the most of anything in this entire story. The Heritage Foundation, Washington's most powerful conservative think tank, has been fighting in federal court to obtain Harry's U.S. immigration records. The reason is simple, and it comes directly from Harry's own memoir, published under his own name for the entire world to read. Harry openly admitted to using cocaine, cannabis, psychedelic mushrooms, and ayahuasca. On a U.S. visa application, concealing prior drug use is not a minor administrative error. It is not something you clarify later. It is a federal offense. It is grounds for deportation. The Heritage Foundation's own attorney stated plainly in open court, if he lied, that gets you deported. People are deported for lying on immigration forms regularly. These are not theoretical consequences. They are applied to people with far less public profile than Harry. The Department of Homeland Security fought the release of these documents for 2 full years. A federal judge ordered them released. They arrived 82 pages long. More than half was blacked out. Think about that. 82 pages of immigration documents, and more than half is hidden. What is in those pages? What is being protected, and from whom? Under this administration, with Trump's Department of Homeland Security in charge and, to put it very mildly, zero goodwill toward the Sussex household, Piers Morgan says this case is far from over. He has said on air with characteristic understatement that there may be trouble ahead. He is not exaggerating. This is an active federal court case with a named attorney, a named petitioner, and documented admissions in Harry's own published words. The clock on this is still running. Piers Morgan has always said the money would be the final truth that actually mattered. Not the titles, not the drama, not the interviews. The money. This week, that picture came into sharper focus than at any point since they left the UK. Financial experts close to this story are now giving Harry and Meghan roughly 5 years before they face what one source described as a reckoning they cannot style their way out of. Princess Diana's inheritance is reportedly largely gone. The inheritance Harry received from the Queen Mother when he turned 40 is disappearing fast given what the couple spend each month. Now consider what they are actually living on. The Netflix deal is finished. Spotify is done. The lifestyle brand is not performing anywhere near the level needed to sustain their current life. The Invictus Foundation is a charity, not a source of personal income. And here is the detail that has quietly become a punchline among people who live in and around Montecito, one of the wealthiest postcodes in America. When you buy a $14 million house in that community, you renovate it. That is not showing off. It is simply what is done. You spend another $7 or $8 million bringing it up to the standard the neighborhood expects. Harry and Meghan moved in as they found it. A property last properly updated by a Russian billionaire 15 years ago. In Montecito, that is a financial signal. The people around them can read it clearly. They are described by those in the community as the poorest rich people in the room, and not in a charming, understated way. In a way that speaks to the reality of what happens when you spend your money instead of protecting it. 5 years of reserves before a lifestyle change becomes unavoidable. That is the estimate. And not one of their current revenue streams is performing at the level needed to push that timeline out. Piers Morgan has always said, when the money ends, the real story begins. The real story is beginning now. Do not let this one get buried beneath the lifestyle brand coverage, because this is arguably the most institutionally serious allegation ever attached to Meghan's name, and it has never been properly resolved. At 2021, Kensington Palace announced a formal investigation into bullying allegations made against Meghan by multiple members of staff. This was not a tabloid story. This was the palace itself, an institution that goes to extraordinary lengths to avoid public conflict, announcing publicly that it had received enough credible information to warrant a formal inquiry. The timing was notable. The announcement came days before the Oprah interview aired. The palace made clear that staff had come forward, that documented communications existed, and that the matter would be thoroughly investigated. The investigation's findings were never publicly released. The palace said the results would remain confidential. Meghan's team called it a smear campaign timed to damage her before the interview aired, but Jason Nauf went on the record. His emails exist in black and white. His language was specific, measured, and professional, describing a pattern of behavior that had caused serious harm to people working closely with the Duchess. 2 people were described specifically as having been pushed out of their jobs. This is documented. This is named. This is not a rumor. Piers Morgan has returned to this point many times for one simple reason. An institution that protects the monarchy above almost everything else decided that these allegations were serious enough to announce publicly. That is not nothing. That is the opposite of nothing. And when you place that formal investigation alongside the long trail of cut-off friends, estranged family members, and departed advisors, a pattern stretching back years before she ever joined the royal family, you are not looking at a series of unfortunate coincidences. You are looking at a consistent documented record, one that Piers Morgan has been citing, sourcing, and standing behind for 5 years. And here we are. Number 1. The truth Piers Morgan identified the moment Meghan first sat down with Oprah Winfrey. The truth he stated so plainly and so directly that it cost him one of the biggest jobs in British broadcasting. The truth that 40,000 people filed formal complaints about. The truth that Meghan herself filed a personal complaint against him over. The truth he refused, even after losing his career, to take back. He said, "I do not believe her, not I disagree with her version of events. Not, I think certain details need checking." He said, "I would not believe her if she read me a weather report." That was 2021. Now look at just this week alone. She told the world she was the happiest she had ever been. Then she told the world these were the hardest 7 years of her life. She told Australian school children she was the most trolled person on the entire planet for 10 consecutive years. She told her followers she is ready to reign again. And she told Harry's family, through Oprah, through Netflix, through 400 pages of memoir, that they were cold, cruel, and impossible. Ask yourself the question Piers has always asked. How many of those statements can be true at the same time? Not whether they sound believable. Not whether they are delivered with emotion, whether they are actually true, whether they hold together when placed side by side, or whether they collapse against each other completely. The moment you put them next to each other, they collapse completely. Piers Morgan has always said the core problem is not that Meghan lies in obvious, easily provable ways. The core problem is that she has never decided who she actually is. Is she a victim or a winner, a duchess or a celebrity, a devoted mother or a global brand? The happiest she has ever been or barely surviving, the institution's greatest asset or its most damaged survivor. She keeps trying to be all of them at once, reaching for whichever identity fits the moment she is currently in. And what this week has proven, Beyond the broken chocolates and the viral unboxing and the Instagram reposts and the Ukraine speech and the financial reports and the federal court case is that the audience has finally stopped following her through the contradictions. Piers Morgan paid an enormous professional price for saying 5 years ago what the majority of people are now openly saying themselves. He did not wait for the crowd to agree. He stated his position, defended it under enormous pressure, and walked away from a career most people would have protected at any cost, rather than give up his right to say it. And here is the final thing worth saying. Not everything in this story is finished. Harry's visa situation is live. The title question inside the palace is unresolved. The financial runway is narrowing, but has not yet run out. There is still time for things to shift, for decisions to be made, for either Harry or Meghan to choose a genuinely different direction. But what cannot be undone is credibility. Once an audience truly stops believing you, not as a tabloid game, but as a deep, repeated, documented gut feeling, you do not get that back with a new podcast, a lifestyle rebrand, or a rocking chair interview with a close friend. Piers Morgan was right. He said so. He paid for saying so. And now the rest of the world is catching up. That is the full picture. 10 truths. 5 years in the making, all arriving in the same extraordinary week. Let me know in the comments which of these 10 truths you think is the most significant, and whether you believe there is any path back from here for either Harry or Meghan. If this gave you something to think about, hit that like button and subscribe. We cover the stories behind the headlines with the context that actually matters. And check out the video on screen right now because it covers the one part of this story that almost nobody is talking about yet. You are going to want to see it.